Nathan was 12 the first time someone called him clever, and 26 the first time he realized clever was the most dangerous thing a lazy person could be called. The cleverness was real, sort of. He picked things up quickly when he could be bothered. He understood maths without trying. He could read people well enough to know which teacher would let things slide and which one wouldn't. He had a quick mouth, a quicker mind, and absolutely no interest in doing anything that felt like work. That was the part nobody quite knew how to address. School figured it out early. Reports said things like capable but unmotivated, and Nathan achieves well when engaged and needs to apply himself more consistently. His mum heard those phrases so many times she began finishing teachers' sentences at parents' evenings, which they found unsettling and she found exhausting. The trouble was that Nathan had worked out something most people take much longer to learn. Being average takes very little effort if you're sharp enough to coast. You don't have to be the best. You just have to be just good enough that nobody fully gives up on you. He was a master of just good enough. Coursework got done the night before. Revision happened on the bus. Jobs got finished to the minimum standard that avoided lectures. Relationships got maintained at the level that required the least input. Nathan didn't think of this as a problem. He thought of it as efficiency. His dad left when he was 9, which people later tried to use as an explanation. Nathan hated that. His dad leaving was sad, sure, but plenty of people had absent fathers and still worked hard. Nathan's problem was simpler and less sympathetic. He couldn't be bothered, and he had enough natural ability to get away with not being bothered for a very long time. By 16 he had GCSEs that were fine. Not great, not embarrassing. The sort of results that made teachers say, could have done better, in a tone that implied they had already moved on to worrying about someone else. By 18 he had drifted into a retail job because it was the first one offered. He stayed for 3 years because leaving would have required effort. He got promoted once by accident because the person above him quit and nobody else wanted the extra responsibility without extra pay worth caring about. By 22 he was working in a call center, which he hated but not enough to leave. The shifts were flexible, the money was okay, the work was mindless enough that he could do it while mostly thinking about other things. He lived in a flat that was always slightly messy. He ate badly. He exercised never. He had friends he saw when it was convenient and dropped when it required effort. His mum said things sometimes. "You're better than this, Nathan." He'd shrug. "It pays the bills." "It doesn't pay them well." "Better than no bills." She'd look at him with that expression parents get when they can see exactly what their child is capable of and exactly what their child is choosing instead. That look used to make him uncomfortable. Eventually it just made him defensive. His older sister, Rachel, was the opposite. She'd worked since she was 16, saved properly, qualified as an accountant, bought a flat at 25. Nathan found her slightly annoying because her existence made his look worse by comparison without her ever saying a word. Once at Christmas she said, very casually, "You know you're going to wake up at 40 and wonder where the years went." Nathan laughed. "That's dramatic." "It's realistic." "Same thing, sometimes." She didn't push it. Rachel had learned that pushing Nathan was like pushing a rope. By 25 he had hit a kind of low-grade misery that he refused to call misery because calling it that would have required doing something about it. He was bored. That was the honest word. Not depressed, not lost, not in crisis. Bored. The kind of bored that sits under your ribs and makes everything feel slightly gray. Work was boring. Evenings were boring. Weekends were boring. He scrolled his phone for hours without remembering what he'd seen. He started things and abandoned them. He made plans and canceled them. He felt like he was waiting for something to happen without ever deciding what that something should be. That was when he found gambling. It didn't start dramatically. It never does. A mate at work mentioned a football bet he'd placed. 20 quid on a long shot that came in. Won £400. Showed Nathan the screenshot on his phone like it was a trophy. Nathan, who had never gambled properly in his life, thought, "That looks easy." That was the phrase that started everything. That looks easy. He placed his first bet that weekend. £20 on a Premier League match. He lost. Placed another. Lost that too. Placed a third. Won £60. The feeling when the third bet came in was something he had not experienced in years. It wasn't just the money. It was the rush. The buzz. The way his heart hammered while the match played out. The way the world felt sharper, more alive, more loaded with possibility. For a man who had spent years feeling nothing much at all, that sudden electricity was like being woken up. He told himself it was just a bit of fun. He told himself he could stop anytime. He told himself he was in control. The phrases every gambler tells themselves, in the exact order every gambler tells them. Within 2 months he was betting most days. Within 4 months he was betting on things he didn't even care about. Horse races in countries he couldn't point to on a map. Tennis matches between players he'd never heard of. Virtual sports that weren't even real but offered the same hit when the result came in. He won sometimes. Lost more often. But the wins were the thing he remembered. The losses were just pauses between wins. His brain had already learned to edit out the bad parts. His mate at work, the one who'd shown him that first screenshot, started to pull back after a while. Said, "You're going hard on it, aren't you?" in a tone Nathan didn't like. "It's fine," Nathan said. "I know what I'm doing." He didn't. By 26 he was in trouble. Not the kind of trouble that shows on the outside. He still went to work. Still paid rent, mostly on time. Still texted his mum back eventually. But underneath, things were cracking. Savings gone. Credit card creeping up. A loan he'd taken out to consolidate, that had somehow become more gambling money instead. He lied about where he was on Friday nights. He ignored bank notifications the way you ignore a smoke alarm in another room. He borrowed small amounts from people and forgot to pay them back, or paid them back late with a casual excuse that fooled nobody. The worst part was that he still felt in control. That was the sickness of it. Even as the numbers got worse, even as the anxiety sat heavier in his chest every morning, some part of him believed the next big win was coming. The one that would fix everything. The one that would prove he'd been smart all along. The big loss came on a Wednesday in March. He'd found what he thought was a sure thing. An accumulator bet. 5 matches. If they all came in, he'd win enough to clear the credit card and most of the loan. He could feel the relief already. The fantasy of being free again, of starting over, of walking away clean. He put down £1,200. Money he did not have. Money that came from an overdraft he'd promised himself he wouldn't touch. 4 of the 5 results came in. The 5th didn't. A late goal in a match he hadn't even watched properly. A defender scoring in the 92nd minute. Something so ordinary and so devastating that Nathan sat in his flat for a full 10 minutes afterward without moving. £1,200. Gone. Plus everything he'd already lost over the months. Plus the credit card. Plus the loan. Plus the lying. He didn't cry. He didn't shout. He just sat there while something inside him went very quiet and very still. Then, slowly, he picked up his phone and opened the gambling app one more time. His thumb hovered over the screen. He could chase it. He had a card with a bit of limit left. He could put 500 on something tonight and maybe get most of it back. Maybe. If he was lucky. Lucky. The word sat in his mouth like something rotten. He thought about Rachel at Christmas. You're going to wake up at 40 and wonder where the years went. He thought about his mum's face. You're better than this, Nathan. He thought about every teacher who'd ever written capable but unmotivated and how he'd smiled at those reports like they were compliments. He thought about all the easy choices. Every single one. The job he took because it was offered, not because he wanted it. The flat he settled for because searching was effort. The friendships he let drift because maintaining them was work. The savings he never built because the future felt like somebody else's problem. The bets he placed because the rush was easier than building a life that didn't need rushing. All of it. Easy. 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 And here he was. 26. Skint. Alone in a flat that smelled of yesterday's takeaway. staring at a phone screen asking him if he wanted to lose more. He closed the app. Then he deleted it. Then he sat there for a long time, shaking, because deleting one app did not delete the hole it had made. The first week was the hardest. Not because of any dramatic withdrawal. Because of the silence. Without the constant noise of bets and matches and notifications, his life felt painfully empty. The evenings stretched. His phone felt useless. He kept reaching for it and finding nothing worth looking at. He told his mom. Not everything. Not the full amount. But enough. Enough that she went quiet on the phone for 10 seconds that felt like 10 minutes. How bad? She asked. Bad. Do you need help? I think I need to fix it myself. Another silence. Then she said, okay. But you're not alone in this. He nearly broke then. Because he had been alone in it for months, and the reason he'd been alone was that he'd chosen easy over honest every single time. He told Rachel next. She was harder on him, which he probably needed. You're an idiot, she said. I know. A proper idiot. I know. How much? He told her. She let out a long breath. Right. Sit down this weekend. We'll work out a plan. That was Rachel. She didn't do emotional speeches. She did plans. The plan was ugly but real. Budget. Repayment schedule. Cut up the credit card. Block the gambling sites. Call the debt people before they called him. Sell the car he barely used. Move to a cheaper flat. Cancel everything that wasn't essential. It would take a long time. Years, probably. Nathan looked at the numbers and felt sick. Not because they were impossible. Because they were the direct result of every shortcut he'd ever taken. He started the job hunt properly this time. Not the lazy version where he sent 3 CVs a month and called it effort. The real version. Rewriting his CV from scratch. Applying to things slightly above his level. Preparing for interviews instead of winging them. Accepting rejection without using it as an excuse to quit. He got a job at a logistics company. Better pay than the call center. Actual career progression. Harder work. The first month nearly killed him because he was used to coasting, and coasting doesn't survive in a place that expects you to actually think. His manager, a woman called Sarah, said within 2 weeks, "You're sharp. But you hold back. Like you're scared of committing to things in case they go wrong." That was the most accurate thing anyone had said to him in years. He started fishing again. That part mattered more than he expected. Fishing was something he'd done with his granddad as a kid. Before his dad left. Before everything got complicated. They'd sit by a canal in Solihull for hours, not talking much, just waiting. His granddad had a patience Nathan had never inherited but had always envied. He found his granddad's old rod in his mum's garage, still in its worn cloth sleeve. The reel needed cleaning. The line needed replacing. He fixed it on a Sunday afternoon with a YouTube video and more concentration than he'd given anything in years. The first time he sat by water again, something shifted. Not magically. Not like a film. But the silence felt different by a canal than it did in his flat. It felt earned. Like the waiting was the point, not the problem. Fishing taught him something gambling never could. That patience isn't empty. That sitting still doesn't mean doing nothing. That the quiet moments where nothing happens are often the ones that hold you together. He went every weekend he could. Sometimes alone. Sometimes with a bloke he met at the tackle shop called Phil, who was 63, retired, and spoke about fish the way some men speak about religion. Phil once said, while they sat watching nothing happen on a still Saturday morning, "You're quite intense for a young lad." Nathan looked over. "Am I?" "You're fishing like you're trying to prove something." That landed harder than Nathan expected. Because he was. He was treating fishing like he'd treated everything else. Trying to get results. Trying to win. Not understanding that some things aren't about winning. "You need to slow down," Phil said. "The fish aren't impressed by effort." Nathan laughed. It was the first honest laugh he'd had in months. The year that followed was not a clean upward line. There were bad weeks. Weeks where the debt felt endless and he wanted to check the betting results just to see what he'd have won. Weeks where work got hard and his instinct was to walk away because walking away was easy and easy was all he'd ever known. Weeks where he let the flat get messy again because tidying felt pointless. Weeks where he snapped at his mom on the phone and hated himself after. He relapsed once. Not gambling. Worse, in a way, because it was so quiet nobody noticed. He stopped trying. For about 3 weeks in October, he went back to doing the bare minimum at work. Stopped looking for extra shifts. Stopped applying for the internal promotion Sarah had mentioned. Stopped fishing. Stopped cooking. Ate rubbish, slept badly, scrolled his phone in the dark like he was 25 again. The thing that pulled him out was not dramatic. Phil texted him. Just said, "Not seen you at the canal. Everything all right?" Such a small message. But it was the first time in weeks someone had noticed his absence in a specific way. Not "how are you" in general. Not "we should catch up sometime." Just, "you were at this place, and now you're not, and I noticed." Nathan stared at the message for a long time. Then he went fishing the next morning. Caught nothing. Felt better anyway. The promotion at work came through in November. Not because Nathan was suddenly brilliant. Because he'd shown up consistently for long enough that consistency became its own qualification. Sarah gave him the news with a look that said she knew he was capable of more and was quietly daring him to prove it. He took the role. It was harder. More responsibility. More chances to fail. The old Nathan would have avoided it because avoiding things that might expose you is the easiest choice of all. This Nathan took it because he was tired of easy. By the following spring, the debt was smaller. Not gone. But smaller in a way that felt real rather than theoretical. He had a routine now. Work. Gym twice a week, badly. Fishing on Saturdays. Phone call to his mom on Sundays. Budget reviewed monthly. No gambling, though the urge still visited sometimes, like an old friend who doesn't understand the relationship is over. He was not transformed. He was just slightly less of a disappointment to himself, and that felt like progress. The decision came in summer. He was offered a chance to move sideways at work into a different department. Easier role. Less pressure. Same money. The sort of move that would have been irresistible a year ago. A comfortable little corner where he could have coasted again. But the same week, Sarah mentioned that the operations team was looking for someone to lead a new project. Hard. Visible. The kind of role that would expose every weakness he had. More money if it went well. Career damage if it didn't. Easy choice. Right choice. He stood at the crossroads of those two options and felt the old pull. The familiar voice saying, "Take the safe one. Take the comfortable one. Don't risk it. You've only just started getting your life together. Don't ruin it by reaching too far." That voice had run his life for 26 years. He thought about the gambling. About how every bet had been a version of wanting something for nothing. About how every easy choice had been a small surrender dressed up as common sense. He thought about Phil saying, "The fish aren't impressed by effort." He thought about Rachel's face at Christmas. "You're going to wake up at 40 and wonder where the years went." He thought about his mom. "You're better than this." Then he thought about himself at the canal on Saturday mornings, sitting still, learning to wait, learning to be patient with a process that didn't guarantee results but was worth doing anyway. He went to Sarah and asked about the project role. She looked at him for a moment. "You sure? It's not a soft landing." "I know. It'll show up every mistake you make." "I know that too." She nodded slowly. "All right. I'll put you forward." He got the role. It was harder than anything he'd done in his life. The first month was a series of small disasters that he had to fix without pretending they weren't his fault. The second month was better but still messy. By the third month, he was starting to find his feet. Not excelling. Not failing. Just working. Actually working. The project launched in autumn. Not perfectly. but it launched. And the feedback was decent. Not glowing. Decent. Nathan would have hated that a year ago, because decent wasn't winning and winning was all he'd understood. Now he understood that decent, earned through real effort over real time, was worth more than any lucky break. One evening after the launch, he sat by the canal alone. The light was going. The water was still. His rod sat in the holder, untouched, line barely moving. He hadn't had a bite in 2 hours and didn't care. He thought about how close he'd come to not being here at all. Not just the gambling. The whole shape of his life before it. The years of just good enough. The mornings he'd wasted. The choices he'd avoided. The version of himself who picked easy every time and called it being sensible. That man had been so certain he was clever. Clever enough to coast. Clever enough to avoid effort. Clever enough to bet his way out of trouble instead of working through it. Clever, clever, clever. And here was the thing Nathan finally understood, sitting by that canal in the last of the light. Clever without discipline is just a slower way of failing. Easy without right is just a longer way of losing. And the thrill of almost winning is never worth the reality of actually losing. He reeled in his line, packed up his gear, and walked back to his car. The sky was purple over the rooftops. Somewhere a dog was barking. A plane crossed high and quiet. Ordinary evening. Ordinary world. But Nathan was in it differently now. Not because he'd become someone imper.